Welcome back to the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. I'm your host, Millard Thomas, and on today's pod, we got Paul Holden of Locked On Rockies on the pod to discuss his team, who is their core, is Trevor Story leaving, revisiting the Nolan Arenado deal, and even talking a little bit about the MLB Lockout because we've got a couple updates from our good friend Rob Manfred. So we got a whole bunch we're going to discuss on today's pod, so let's jump right into it.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Thomas of Locked On Diamondbacks still here. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer, so please go check out my website, MillardThomas24.myportfolio.com. On there, you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos, my graphic design. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 for my personal account, or just look up Locked On Diamondbacks on both Twitter and Instagram for the podcast handle. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks, because without you, the listeners, I would not be doing this podcast. It's free and available on all platforms. So please continue to tell your friends. But now, without further ado, let's bring on the man of the hour. He's already beating his chest. We got Paul Holden in the building.
Woo! Super excited to be here. I got a big thing. I gotta live up to that big intro too. You know, Mr. Famous graphic designer out here working with the pro teams. You know, this is a big podcast to be on.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm famous because I work for the Coyotes at all. If we're famous, it's because of these podcasts right here getting us verified. So shout out Locked On Network. We love you, baby. But Paul, how you doing today, sir?
I'm good. Just got a ton of faith in the commissioner of baseball.
Yeah.
Super confident in the direction and everything in terms of my team and baseball in general. No, I'm just kidding. But with how crazy baseball is, I am still, however, doing quite fine.
That's why you're a superstar host, Paul, because that was a beautiful segue, because we're going to start right off with the MLB Lockout, because we did see our good friend Rob Manfred. He poked his head out of the hole, kind of like the groundhog on Groundhog's Day, and he was like, hey, little update. It looks like the universal DH, the owners are on board, so that's most likely coming. I don't see why the players wouldn't be on board. And also, I think we're going to stop giving away draft picks for teams not re-signing their players. I think we're going to implement the universal DH and get rid of draft pick compensation. So, Paul, let's first start with the universal DH. I'm a guy who's like, hey, I watch National League team just like you, but I don't want to see pitchers up there at the plate. Like, we have Madison Bumgarner. He's one of the best at it. He's still not good at it compared to most people. So how do you feel about the universal DH potentially coming to the National League?
You know, it's a big big win for the Rockies and one big loss for the Rockies in terms of how they do things. The DH coming to the Rockies is a godsend, and Rockies fans honestly should be ecstatic. This is something that I've been in favor of too. It's similar, not maybe the level. Well, actually, maybe in a different way. The Rockies had German Marquez, who is a pitcher that can swing it. He should have won the Silver Slugger last year, but lost out to the Braves guy just because the Braves guy, I think, hit a home. No, German had a home run. It was just because the Braves guy was in the World Series. That's the only reason, because German statistically was the better hitter as a pitcher. I will not miss watching pitchers go up and swing. It's just because, listen, I know it's not easy to do what Shohei does, but it's like, if you're going to go up and take an at-bat, I hate non-competitive at-bats, and there are far too many pitchers that take non-competitive at-bats, and it's wasting an out is so frustrating. And I know Sully is over, from Locked On MLB. He will defend pitchers batting till they die, and I would appreciate pitchers batting if the craft and the skill was taken seriously. It's just I'm not trying to shame pitchers for focusing on pitching and not being a batter. It's just, if you're gonna hit, I want a cohesive approach. I mean, there's sometimes that pitchers go up and you're like, is that even safe? Like, honestly, sometimes when I look at the swings that some of these pitchers have, and let alone the fact that they could injure themselves doing something wacky on a swing. So I'm not going to miss watching pitchers bat. And for Rockies fans, it's huge, because now that means Charlie Blackmon doesn't have to play right field. So now the Rockies have to do something in the offseason with the outfield, or they'll figure out with all the outfielders they have and still go with that. But for Rockies fans to focus on, that means Charlie Blackmon's days in right field are probably over, which is great.
Yeah, and I don't really understand why so many people really love. I get the novelty of seeing pitchers hit, that's a good time, but the actual watching a pitcher hit throughout the course of a 162 game season, like it's really not that much fun. It's a lot of swings and misses. It's a lot of games where, wow, we really need a run here, and our pitcher's coming up to the plate, and we basically have no chance. Like that would be like in football, every 10 pass attempts, you're like, hey, let's get the kicker in. Let's let him just throw this ball just for no reason. Like
Yeah.
you're just putting non-competitive guys who barely even practice hitting at the plate. Like I would love it in America if our system was more toward, we tried to build a system where we let the players do multiple skills. Like it's become so much into specialization. If you're a pitcher, you're only going to pitch. If you're a hitter, we don't even want you, being a switch hitter. We want you just focusing on one side. And I wish we could grow more Shohei Otanis, homegrown Shohei Otanis, because it doesn't seem like they really try to promote that here in the States, at least. So I would love to see what the developmental system in the United States seems to. I would like to see how it grows over the next few years with the emergence of a Shohei Ohtani. But the universal DH, I think we need it back in baseball. Like, I think the 2020 season was a great sample for us. And I think it just showed, like, I think it just made a better product. Like, I know there's a lot of people pre-2020 that was like, oh, man, like a Sully. Like, they were like, oh, man, I really don't want a universal DH. But after 2020, I feel like there's a large population of pro, or I guess anti-universal DH people that became pro-universal DH because of the 2020 season. So I'm
Yeah.
glad that's coming back to the sport.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, the only thing I will say, I do like the fact that in the National League, without the DH, the manager was more involved in the strategy of when you're subbing, when you're pinch hitting, when you're using your bench, made for more interesting. And I think, I don't know if necessarily this is the most fair thing to say, but better managers, I think the role of the manager in baseball is a whole different discussion for a different time. But like, it does seem like the National League managers were more involved in the game, at least inning by inning, versus the American League, where it's, if our starter's giving us a good enough game, we're going in cruise control basically until, calling your shifts and whatnot, all that stuff in your pitches. But when it comes to lineup construction and how you're going to handle the middle to end of the game and who you're bringing in and when, that's going to be a major impact. But it's going to be for the better, I think, just because, it's, if the idea was more, trying to grow more pitchers that can hit and more Shoheis, that's awesome, but that's going to take years. Shohei's impact on the game, there is going to be more people that will do that, but we'll see. It's so hard to get to the majors, and and to do that. So I really, I'm not going to just sit here and expect, it's like, oh, if you're going to pitch in the big leagues, I expect you to hit too. I mean, that's kind of just crazy, especially with where the level the elite hitters are and where the elite pitchers are. It's to be Shohei Ohtani is an anomaly. Like I think we just really have to emphasize that.
Yeah, that's true. He is an anomaly, and we're probably not going to see, if ever, another Shohei Ohtani. But I always kind of push back against the strategy argument. I definitely think there is a strategy, no doubt about it, when you don't have the DH in there. But I also think there's strategy to trying to figure out how to pitch around like a Big Poppy, or if you had Charlie Blackmon in your prime and he's coming up to the plate, like that's tough too. Now you got an extra bat in the lineup that you have to try to figure out, pitch around, especially if they're a quality bat like a David Ortiz or JD Martinez. So I just think it's a different kind of strategy. And I think once you get into the groove, because is it really a strategy that we want to see promoted? Like we saw in the playoffs last year where, a team like the Brewers had to decide, oh, do we want to keep Freddie Peralta in or do we want to take him out because we got the bases loaded? We haven't scored, a run in 2 games, and now we need a run here to potentially move on in the playoffs. Like I don't even want that to be a part of the game. If that's, a strategy, like I want to get that strategy out where it's
right.
Do I want to keep my best pitcher in or do I put it in some crappy guy so I could go to my bullpen right away in the 4th inning? So I think the universal DH is the right decision. But how do you feel about the draft pick compensation? Because I know the MLB kind of said like this will incentivize teams to actually re-sign their players and not just let them walk in free agency. But maybe now you just see more Nolan Arenado type deals where they trade them, at the deadline instead of just letting them walk in free agency.
I mean, Nolan wasn't even traded at the deadline. He was traded in the offseason.
Yeah.
But the Rockies certainly did not vote for this. There's no possible way, because this is exactly what the Rockies did this year. This was the plan with Trevor Story apparently all along. Now, if Trevor Story, if Trevor Story signs elsewhere, which it's all anticipated, there's it's kind of crazy. I think that it's been so the rumors around him have been so cold. Like, there hasn't been a lot of, I know the lockout's been for a while, but even pre-lockout, I kind of figured there'd be a little more smoke to where Trevor Story was going to end up. But, if with the Rockies, that's what that was their whole, it seems like that was their whole plan, was they were going to, why they didn't let offer John Gray the qualifying offer as well. I don't know, but I'm fine with it. I mean, I think, the Rockies were incentivized and thought that the right move was to draft instead of re-sign Trevor Story. And me, that is a mistake completely. I mean, that is not, and just why? Like, I mean, so you're just going to, like, to me, that's the Rockies saying, hey, let's roll the dice to try to find another Trevor Story instead of embracing Trevor Story.
Yeah, I'm definitely not team getting rid of your best player like Trevor Story, Arenado. I mean, as a D-backs fan, I'm not trying to get rid of Ketel Marte. Like, if the formula is trading away your best player to hopefully get back a package of prospects or get back a pick, like, you're going to be waiting 5 years to hopefully get one player that lives up to the guy you just got rid of. Like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense most of the time.
Millard, I got to tell you, man, I am exhausted across sports about the draft. I really am. And baseball especially. Like, the Rockies say they're a draft and develop team, but yet their farm system is in the bottom of baseball. They think that, why wait for the next Trevor Story when you have Trevor Story? There's, like, because I know, like, here's the deal. Everyone's probably sitting here thinking it's as simple as, oh, there's no way Trevor Story would go to the Rockies. Trevor Story would go back to the Rockies if you back a dump truck of money up to him, which you can, because the Rockies, again, can't hide. This is another way. The Rockies have one less thing to hide behind now, which is good for me, because this is lazy. To me, it's just I don't know if lazy is the right word, but it's seems disrespectful. Like, if it's just another thing for Trevor Story to be sitting there thinking at the trade deadline, when it really processes, they're like, so the Rockies either really think that they're going to make me an offer that I can't refuse, or at the end of the day, I'm worth one draft pick. Because there is no way that teams were not offering a great deal for the package of Trevor Story and John Gray at the deadline. I don't buy that, because now what the Rockies are getting back for those two players, one draft pick.
And if baseball is more of a sport like basketball or football, where if you got that NBA superstar could change your franchise, or football, you landed that quarterback could change your franchise, you can draft Mike Trout. And guess what? You can still be the worst team in baseball for over a decade. So it's not like that one draft pick is even going to change your life that much.
Yeah. And across all sports, the draft is so risky. The Rockies' approach to right now should not have been trade away their best players. It should have been buying in, trading your draft picks to get the big names instead of the Daniel Murphys and the Ian Desmond. Without this draft pick incentive, the Rockies would actually be more incentivized to go out and sign free agents, spend money in the offseason. And it's not all back to that, but again, this is a prime example of why. Like, honestly, like, why do we reward teams with a draft pick? Because they're not willing to spend the money to pay for these elite players. Like, I don't blame Trevor Story for wanting to walk, but you're also not going to blame Trevor Story if at the end of the day the Rockies offered him the best deal, because he'll go where the money is. And getting Trevor Story back is so much better than this one draft pick. Like, I just, and it's going to be plague me as a Rockies fan and podcast host forever. I am so tired of the draft, especially when the Rockies drafted and built a team and then decided to slam the window shut on themselves instead of doing, it's not the same sport, but you can't look at what the Los Angeles Rams did. They have taken an approach that is different in all sports. And they said, we know we have a shot. And this is the window. Who knows about the draft? Let's go for it. And they're playing in the big one on Sunday. I mean, that mindset needs to be a bigger one in sports. I firmly believe that. So, yeah, I don't think the Rockies are happy, but I think this is good, because I think this is a pro player move. And especially as I've learned from this lockout, I'm very much pro player. My sympathies for owners and the rich person problems of baseball team ownership are patience runs very thin. But I like to at least be open-minded and understand big business type stuff. But like at the end of the day, this is a scapegoat for teams to say, oh, we tried, we gave them the qualifying offer. Thanks for the draft pick. But instead, no, you should be paying your players and players should be getting the offers what they should be, because they are the best of the best.
And I think the MLB equivalent to what the Rams are doing would probably be like a Dave Dombrowski, who has gone to multiple World Series and multiple franchises. But every time he gets hired to be the president of GM, the first thing he does is completely blow up their farm system. He trades away his guys. That's what he did with the Red Sox. He traded Moncada, Kopech, and got back Chris Sale. He's done it. He's done it with other franchises as well. He's like, if I can go out there and get me an all-star, superstar level player just for some maybe good prospects 5 years down the line, like why would I not do that if I already have a good team on paper and I just need a superstar or two to fit around the edges to bring my championship core together? Like you should go in and go after those kind of players and use your prospects as bargaining chips and not just put all your faith in the hope in the future, because a lot of times these teams that do it, it doesn't work out.
And in baseball, it's like it's such a shot in the dark. I mean, it's a what if, and it's a what if that takes 5 years to figure out. I mean, the Rockies top, and this will probably lead into something. Maybe this will help you transition. But the Rockies top draft pick from I can't remember when, I just talked about him, but Brendan Rodgers just now got consistent starting time last year, even though he's been on the Rockies for 2 seasons. He was drafted in the first round, he was drafted in the first round of the 2015 draft, and he was just getting to be, and this is the Rockies' fault too, but he was just now the everyday starter at second base for the Rockies last season. I mean, that's a ton of time, and he's had injuries along the way, gone up and down. It's maddening. It really is.
No, we're going to talk about Brendan Rodgers because I was looking at his minor league career and he was like a top 100 guy for like 5 seasons or something. Like he spent a long time in the minors as a top prospect. So I was kind of surprised to see that. But I think one reason Brendan Rodgers was able to climb up the prospect rankings is because every day after his workouts, I think he pounded a Built Bar. Have you ever heard of Built Bars, Paul? Have you ever had one?
I am quite familiar with the Built Bars. My favorite things. I can't speak, if Brendan Rodgers is slamming Built Bars, but I can say Built Bars are great for me because I'm a big candy bar guy. And so with the fact that the Built Bars with the low sugar, they're helping me kind of kick the candy bar habit a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I mean, candy bars, they're deadly. But the thing with the Built Bars, they're not deadly because even though they're still covered in 100% chocolate, even though they're both soft and easy to chew, they're also low calorie. They're also low sugar. They're high protein. They're high fiber. They're great for that keto diet. But if you want to get your own Built Bar, you know where you got to go, Paul? Got to go to Built.com. I'm sorry. I knew you were going to say it. I saw it on the tip of your tongue.
It's all right.
Do it. Just use that promo code LOCK15. You'll get 15% off your first order. Promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, Paul. Oh, I've been signed out of my notes. I don't know why that happened. But I wanted to ask you about your core in a little bit. But I think I want to stay on the Trevor topics. I want to stay on the Trevor Story topic first. I just said like one big word there. You said, there hasn't been too many rumors or whispers about where he's going, but do you have a number one team that you think Trevor Story is going to be linked to, or that you think in your gut he wants to go to, or can you see him coming back home to Colorado?
I since he didn't sign anywhere, the possibility of Trevor Story returning to the Colorado Rockies is still there because the Rockies have said themselves that they think that they can, and back. Obviously, that's very much the classic just owner talk. I would love for him to come back. If Trevor Story comes back, that's a huge deal for the Rockies, and the Rockies continue to be not the best, but in a closer position to the wild card than people might think if they go and continue to add pieces. Like I mentioned when we were talking earlier, Charlie Blackmon being the DH is a big deal. If the Rockies are able to improve the offense by adding a power bat, and there's still plenty of great options for outfield, and get more from one of their outfielders out there, maybe even do something to trade with Raimel Tapia. There can be something there. So let me put all that maybe hope for Rockies fans or Diamondbacks fans. Well, I guess the Diamondbacks fans certainly would not be looking forward to Trevor Story returning. I know that. But that's like I'm going to 5% return at the most. And that's just because the Rockies could offer him a lot of money and no one else has. And there hasn't been a lot of talks of to the Yankees, to this, to that. I, however, think the Yankees will still be a factor. They always will be, just because they're the Yankees and the Rockies. There is a history there of Rockies ending up on the Yankees, especially in free agency. And there's a certain second baseman there that I'm sure, or I guess he's a first baseman now, that would love to share the infield with Trevor Story again in DJ LeMahieu. My personal pick, if he was to not go to Colorado, I don't like the idea of him changing positions, but I love the idea of Trevor Story in Seattle. I think Trevor Story is the type of player that I'm located in Seattle. I cover the Rockies. I'm born and raised in Denver, but I'm here and I work with the flagship of the Mariners, so I'm kind of around. I'm more familiar with the Mariners than just the average person, and they are a team that I think would love a player of not only Trevor Story's caliber, but I think he fits with the identity of the team. Big bat flipping home runs, kind of can fit with this infield of high energy. He is high energy, but he's got that cool level head about him where he's kind of he's not always going to be like too flashy, but as you know, if he connects with one, that bat is getting flipped.
Oh yeah,
better than I would. I will say this, and I think Trevor Story is the best bat flipper in the league. I think he goes up against anybody, and that's where he carries himself. And I think him with a J.P. Crawford, with the young guy out there,
Kalenic.
Yes, with him, and with the fact that this Mariners team has a lot of young, exciting people that I think could really benefit from Trevor's. Just kind of story in terms of being I struck out a lot. I was on a team that was there close. Now I'm back on it. He was there with the Rockies when they got in that competitive. He can go back and kind of, when we were playing Arizona in the wild card game, when we were playing Milwaukee, this is what got in our way. They can kind of readjust to that. But, deep down inside, man, I got to tell you, I think if the Yankees don't get Correa, I wouldn't be surprised if Trevor Story is at least offered a lot of money, but we'll see. Like I said, hoping he comes back to Colorado, but I wouldn't hold your breath.
Yeah, I'm expecting the Yankees to just be throwing money left and right after this MLB lockout. But for Trevor Story, I mean, are you at all worried about like maybe his home road splits? DJ LeMahieu, he has looked phenomenal for the Yankees. He's been one of the best hitters in baseball since going over to the Yankees. But I know for some other people, there's just a little hesitation after playing in Coors. Maybe if he leaves, the numbers go down. I think overall, if you look at his splits, they're still pretty good both ways. So how do you feel about Trevor Story home and away?
I mean, listen, there are people that you can look at and you're worried about the splits. But I would just like to point out Nolan Arenado had a down year in 2020, and I think he did just fine batting in St. Louis, I think he hit 300 with, I'm pretty sure he was 300 with like 30 home runs or something like that. Trevor Story will be fine. Trevor Story is, I think Trevor Story is an underappreciated player in baseball. He was overshadowed him not being talked about enough with Nolan Arenado in the success of the Rockies, because if his elbow is healthy, he is a Gold Glove caliber shortstop. So every time that maybe he has a dip in the offense on the road, he's going to back it up with defense and save you runs in there. And yeah, I don't worry too much about it. I think Trevor Story is an elite baseball player, and I think he is going to be someone that will be successful wherever he goes, no matter what. I really truly think he's elite, and maybe maybe he hit the peak, but I certainly don't think so. I still think he is in a position to be a very good hitter, whether he's no matter where he hits. I think he's, again, it's factor in if he goes to New York and he has the short porch. I mean, there's plenty of hitter friendly ballparks out there that will work just fine. I think he is good enough and has gone through, I think, a giant development of hitting where it is. I struck out a lot this past year. I think when you can make that adjustment, that'll do wonders for you. So if Trevor Story isn't striking out a lot, I don't think you'll see a ton of changes in the splits. But you do have to worry a little bit about Trevor Story coming off the down year last year and the injury. I will say that is something you do have to keep in mind. But I believe that he is the type of the caliber of player that should still be in anyone's 3 through 5 spot.
And I'll just throw this out there. Arenado this year, 255 average, the worst of his career if you don't count the 2020 season. 807 OPS, the lowest since his rookie year. Just throwing it out there. Yeah,
Good. Okay. I'm this,
just throwing it out
clearly I
there.
was just exposed right there, which is totally fine. I thought he batted something like 300 or something, but it was definitely very much angry X. I would only see the highlights, and I didn't need to look too much into
Still an all-star.
how's. Yeah, of course. And he also won the Gold Glove when he wasn't supposed to. I get to be salty about Arenado winning Gold Gloves, but I think I think a factor with the Nolan thing. I mean, their defense adds to that. Like I think, I know we're talking offense here, but people need to look at Rockies players as the full package. It's just this. I know the core stigma, but all of the players that maybe have struggled a little bit are usually elite defenders. DJ LeMahieu is incredible in the field, at least used to. I don't follow the Yankees as much, so again, I could be completely wrong with the stats and stuff. But again, there's so much more to Rockies players than just the fact that they hit at Coors Field in 82 games. And Trevor Story was really good at the end of the year. He both on the road and at home. So I would say that is where you're really encouraged by. You're not as worried about Trevor Story doing that, but yeah, I think anybody can anticipate a little bit of a dip in some production from offense from Coors, and that's not their fault. I mean, it's a very hitter friendly place, and what can you do? But I don't worry too much when it comes to players of the caliber of Trevor Story and Nolan Arenado. I mean, I'm sure he will bounce back and be fine.
And maybe it was a cautionary tale for Nolan Arenado with looking at his dip, but on the positive side, if you look at DJ LeMahieu, what he's been able to do in New York, like he's been one of the best hitters in baseball since going to New York. So those are just kind of like two levels of the spectrum.
And DJ it proves it's just it's an approach to hitting too. And I think maybe with one thing with Nolan is I think Nolan is maybe trying to go for the home runs more. I had a good conversation. One of my Rockies super fan loves to dive into data. If someone can adapt it, maybe even if Trevor Story, the mindset of doubles over home runs, especially in Coors Field, and going for the contact, going for scoring that way, I think that's going to be the secret to defeating this mindset of home runs are just as good as strikeouts. So it's kind of, in the grand scheme of things, I know it's not obviously 1 for 1, but how the approach to hitting was last year.
Yeah, maybe Arenado just needs time to adjust to his new team, because Paul Goldschmidt's numbers in the first year in St. Louis as well, they kind of look like Nolan Arenado's this season. But if you looked at Goldschmidt numbers this past season, they were way up back to his basically
he was
averages. So.
Was he an MVP candidate this year?
Yeah, somehow he didn't make the All-Star team, but he finished 6th in MVP voting. So
I remember he had a really good end of the campaign. I think that was what I remember, but
that's kind of his deal. It's kind of like a second half player throughout his career. But I want to talk a little bit about the Rockies core here, Paul. But if you had to bet on where Trevor Story's next team is going to be, where would you go for that, Paul?
I think I'm going to go to the number one spot for all your sports betting action, and that's betonline.net. I hear they got not only a great new updated desktop and mobile website, but even more props, odds, all sorts of stuff than ever before.
Yes, BetOnline has you covered this season, like you said, with more props, odds, and lines than ever before, because football continues its march to the playoffs, right to the big game, which is going to be this Sunday. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live real-time updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. Bet online where the game starts. And also, it's Super Week brought to you by Get Upside. There's no better place to get coverage of the big game than the Locked On NFL podcast. Locked On Bengals and Locked On Rams are in LA all week covering the big game. So go check out those respective podcasts because they are doing the Lord's work during Super Bowl week.
I know this. I know you want to go for the core, and I don't want to distract too much, but I do got to ask. Where's your head at with the big one on Sunday? Any quick football thoughts?
Well, before the season started, I put $5 down on the Rams to win the Super Bowl, so I'll win $80 if that cashes. But I might hedge it and do a little Cincinnati, stuff too. But that's only if we're talking betting. But outside of betting, I really think it's going to be a toss up of a game because I like the Rams defense a lot. A lot of people have talked about that. The D line, Aaron Donald. Of course, Joe Burrow gets sacked. I almost called him Joe Bengal. Joe Burrow gets sacked like 15 times a game, something ridiculous. He's going to be on his back the whole game. But it's also like Tom Brady. Like, it doesn't matter if he goes down 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns. If he's in striking distance in the second half, entering the fourth quarter, you believe he could get his team back in the game. So honestly, it's hard to make a pick. I'm going to go with probably the cliche like 27-24 answer and pick the LA Rams on Sunday.
I think that's a safe one. I'm kind of conflicted, obviously. I mean, I got my Joe Burrow draft day T-shirt on the video here, the 7-4. Where I went to college, that's where he went to high school, and I covered him in high school, and I got family in Cincinnati, so it's like my heart is telling me I want to root for the Bengals, but I'm a Von Miller guy till I die, so I can't root against it. And that's the ultimate clash because I'm sitting here like I want Von Miller to have a big game, but like now it's sitting here it's like I want Joe Burrow to have a big game, so it's a big conflict. But I think 27-24 is a good pick. I think it's going to be a really, really good game, but I'm rooting for. I guess I'm rooting for the Bengals. I'm rooting for Von Miller, but in the back of my head, man, with the playoff run, I got the Bengals on the leg. Another field goal late, done. I know that's good. Enough football talk for our baseball podcast here, but had to get to at least the hot take.
No, I appreciate it because sometimes today was NBA trade deadline day. I was like, damn, I wish I had an NBA podcast so I could just go off. But
I can't help you there. I know the Nuggets. I know the Nuggets didn't do anything, and James Harden is no longer on the Nets and played 16 games with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Yeah. That's about it. That's all I know.
Oh, that's a lot right there. And your guy Von Miller, he's already got a ring. So if you don't want to root for him on Sunday, it's all right. He's already,
it's more likely the Bengals are back, right, than Von Miller gets back. It's just kind of like. Like who knows? But at the end of the day, I'm kind of sitting there like a win-win because it's going to be how my betting performance goes on Sunday more so than anything.
That is true. So looking at the Rockies core, I was doing my top 6, and let me tell you my top 6 that I had written down because I'm definitely going to need your input on this. I put not in any particular order, just who I think the top 6 players on the roster are. I put CJ Cron, Brendan Rodgers, Ryan McMahon, Herman Marquez, Senzatella, and then I went with the surprising pick, Austin Gomber, because, he's the headliner in the Nolan Arenado trade. Now, the first thing I want to ask is, do you think Charlie Blackmon should be in that top core of 6 players for the Colorado Rockies? Because I don't know. He's the mid-30s. He said he can't play defense. Thank God the DH is coming, but I feel like my man's definitely in the decline.
Yeah, but he still can swing pretty well. However, the big concern with Charlie Blackmon last year, not only the decline in the offensive numbers, was his inability to hit the fastball. He really struggled hitting the fastball last year, which is it's a big deal. Yeah. When it comes to statistically the best player, when you say the core of the Rockies, I think Charlie Blackmon at this point is on the outside looking in. However, it simply cannot be understated his role as a leader. That if Trevor Story is gone, Charlie Blackmon, and he still was. Charlie Blackmon was much more of the vocal leader type of person than Trevor Story was anyway. But at that point, Charlie Blackmon is really the only one left. From Ryan McMahon was just getting up in there. The pitching staff, obviously, I'm talking position players. So he still plays a major role on this team. But yeah, I would say I don't think Austin Gomber is there, but you nail it with the top 2 pitchers. We didn't see enough from Gomber. We saw great stuff from Gomber, but he got hurt. We also saw some really bad stuff from Gomber in terms of walks early in the season. I would say that last spot
open
truly has it could be Elias Diaz potentially, but you could still put Charlie Blackmon there. But Elias Diaz was a huge success at the end of the year, but he was abysmal to start the season as the Rockies catcher. But at the end of the year, the Rockies got production out of him that the Rockies haven't seen from the catching position in years. So I would say that last one is kind of up in the air, but what I will say is CJ Cron is a key piece, but he can't be the guy for the Rockies. He simply just like I don't think Ryan McMahon can be the guy. I want them to, and I did a whole podcast about asking if Ryan McMahon's going to be the guy. I want to see Ryan McMahon get better because he can be that guy. And they're the flashes of being the number one Rockies. His defense is he's as good as Nolan is. He honestly statistically was better than Nolan Arenado was as a defender this year. And however, he struggles and he is very streaky when it comes to hitting. And the Rockies need him to take a nice big jump for him to be. You can't really be the next Nolan Arenado, but to be that guy, to kind of be the person that I think a lot of Rockies fans are hoping for. If Brendan Rodgers continues to trend up with this increasing playing time, he will be the best player on the Colorado Rockies. And he is if he has a good season next year, I think will lead the Rockies, not in home runs, but in general offense. He will be your batting average leader. He will be your doubles leader, high RBIs, really great in the 2 spot. I think that last 5th spot that you need, or that last position. Sorry to interrupt you there.
No, you're good.
You're on video back there, dude.
Yeah.
It's whoever the Rockies go after in free agency, and because you have to, because there's no one else there that's really going to bring the impact that Trevor Story was being, because that's your list would be, it would be Story, it would be McMahon, it would be Rodgers, it would be Marquez and Senza as your big core there with those guys, with your main guys. But without Story, you simply have to replace him because there's no one on the Rockies roster that's going to take that step there. If Charlie Blackmon thrives as a DH, he will get himself back in that conversation, because if Charlie Blackmon can be a productive member of the offense, that's going to be a huge deal for the Rockies. But I think when you're looking at it, that core needs to be fleshed out with someone that's not on the roster.
Yeah, I was surprised, delightfully surprised to see CJ Cron's numbers, because I was like, whoa, he basically had an all-star level season, like 28 bombs, 900 OPS. Like, this dude had a fantastic year, and I honestly had no idea about it until I was doing this research. I was like, whoa, Cron's like a pretty good player, but like you said, should he be your best position player, if there's no Trevor Story? Like, probably not. You're probably not going too far if Cron's your best position player. So when you're like, well, first I want to ask, have you seen enough from Brendan Rodgers to make you believe he does have the potential to be, a superstar level player for your team?
I don't know if it's superstar, but I have seen enough where I want him as the starting second baseman when opening day comes. That is good enough for me right now. Mm-hmm. And then if we get to, and then from there, I want him to lead the Rockies. And then from there, we'll go. If at the end of the day, Brendan Rodgers is batting 275, high doubles and high RBIs, but he's 10th in batting average in overall scheme of things, I'm happy with that. Because again, I think truly the Rockies need to invest in someone to beat this. Rockies offense has been bad for so long, even with Nolan Arenado and DJ LeMahieu on it. I mean, this team has been a low offensive performing team for so long. And Brendan Rodgers, Ryan McMahon, CJ Cron, those names aren't the thump that are going to bring when you used to have the thump of Nolan Arenado and Trevor Story, because they brought in that power. They brought in not only the ability to hit for mostly contact, but Trevor Story especially is a power guy. That all known there. So I think Brendan Rodgers can be a leader for the Rockies on offense, but I don't think you should hope for him to be the power hitting type of leader. But I was really happy with Brendan Rodgers last year. So he is easily my most anticipated Rocky. And then, I guess it could be a core if the Rockies have found a diamond in the rough in Connor Joe, but that it's simply we got to see a small, exciting sample size that is just simply far too early to call there. So I think you can see Brendan Rodgers, but I don't think you're going to necessarily see him leading the league in everything, but could be.
Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed with Daniel Bard's story. His numbers he could strike out people, but overall, I'm looking at his numbers. They fell off a lot from that 2020 season, but great comeback story at the very least.
And that was good too. But here's the deal: I'm done with Daniel Bard as a closer.
Okay,
like as a closer. But here's the deal: if he comes back and he's pitching in the middle of a game, I think that's fine, and I think that's better for him. I truly think that the demons that face him of because his whole big thing was the yips. That was his and his confidence. I mean, to be a closer, you have to be confident. And he came back. He got his comeback player of the year story. He did amazing stuff. But he's still, when his fastball is on, I think he can still be effective in a bullpen, just not in a closing situation where it's a tight game. And then you walk the first guy, and then it's a single, and then you walk the next guy, and his base is loaded and nobody's out. It's like there's more wiggle room, and I think more confidence to be there for Daniel Bard in the middle. But certainly, no one from the Rockies bullpen can be thrown into the core of the team because they might have some exciting pieces, but that is another thing that failed the Rockies last year.
Yeah, poor guy. I wish the Red Sox never tried to make him a starter because he was really good for a short time there. But final question, Paul, before we depart today, unless you have any for me, because I know I've kind of dominated the questions today. But I just wanted to know, like, obviously the Trevor Story situation, you're going to try to figure out post lockout. But what moves are you expecting or you want your team to make or that your front office has talked about potentially making after the lockout? Are there any certain positions you're targeting, any certain players you're targeting? What's the game plan post lockout?
The Rockies have said that they are planning to do something in free agency, which is interesting to hear. The plan is to add a power bat, and I believe the power bat is going to come into the outfield. They've talked about that. Again, they've said that they think they can bring back Trevor Story, but that's going to be, again, you need to replace Trevor Story and you need to improve your outfield. You need to let Sam Hilliard maybe get some more time to see because you have a couple of – the problem with the Rockies is they have young, quote-unquote, guys just in terms of experience, not necessarily in terms of age. The Rockies have a lot of 27-year-old rookies, and I know that's not old in the grand scheme of things, but in sports terms and in baseball, that is. It definitely is. So the Rockies have to sign a free agent outfielder that can hit. And it's going to cost them. They have to realize that to play ball in this market, especially with the money that we were seeing teams like the Rangers spend, they have to do it. And I'm no longer can they sit and hide behind mid-market, blah. The Rockies do not get that excuse anymore. They were given the All-Star game on a moment's notice because they know that stadium is there and they know people will go there. The Rockies were a top 10 team in attendance again, as they have continued to be time and time again. It's just a matter of the Rockies have to buy in, and they have to buy in with that bat in the outfield. I used to be high on Castellanos, but I think Castellanos is going back to the Reds. I think he likes the Reds. I think he likes Cincinnati too much. I wouldn't mind a Schwarber.
Schwarber would be interesting.
He'd be interesting. And because unfortunately, I'd rather the Rockies go for the best outfielder possible, the best center field, potentially maybe the best person to play center field, than to go big bucks on not Trevor Story or Carlos Correa for shortstop. I don't think Carlos Correa even is entertaining the thought of the Colorado Rockies. I'm just saying, if you're not going to spend big on the outfield, at least throw as much as you can at Trevor Story. Why not? Like at least try that, and then get a middle reliever that's just a little more stable. That isn't just a former Rocky. They re-signed Julius Chassin, which is great. He was fine, but I'd like the Rockies to really, or because they have to see what they have with a lot of bullpen arms. So I don't think you need to really go and buy in. There's not enough that they've done for their bullpen to see if some of these guys are it. But the must is the offense has to be improved because this pitching staff is too good not to have people bat behind them. And the Rockies are a team that should be good at offense. That's what everyone says they are. But I think people would be surprised to hear that the Rockies have been a bottom performing team in offense for many years in a row now.
Yeah, and the whole idea of small markets in baseball, it's just such a big fallacy. Like there's no salary cap. Anyone go out there and just sign any player they want. Like MLB players are going to gravitate toward the money, and in baseball, if you have an owner willing to give it out, you're going to get the best players out there because these franchises have basically doubled and tripled in value just over the last 10 years. Go see what the D-backs were valued at in 2010. It was like $700 million. Now they're projected to be worth like $1.2 billion. Like it's insane. Baseball makes more money than the NBA. People don't even realize that. Baseball makes more money than basketball, which seems like, the most popular social media sport out there. So In baseball, if you want to go out there and get a good player, all you have to do is offer them the contract. Before the Padres became what the Padres are now, they were going out there and giving out money to Eric Hosmer just because. The D-backs have pony up money for Zach Greinke before, and they were able to get him because they're like, here's $200 million. If you want to go out there and get a superstar player, if you're an MLB team, you can do it. You just got to have an owner willing to spend money, and you got to be able to, let your pockets out a little bit because
and a prime example of that is the Texas Rangers this year.
Yeah,
that's
a beautiful one.
The Texas Rangers were terrible last year. But now some of the top names in baseball are now Texas Rangers, because what did the Texas Rangers do? They went out and they said, hey, here's a bunch of, especially John Gray. They were like, hey, John Gray, here's like $5 more million than the Rockies are offering you. And then the Rockies were like, punting on that. Can't handle that. No, can't. This guy that wants to be in Colorado and pitch, we got to punt there. Yeah, I'm players get paid. Go chase some money. That's the whole World Series, and wins are great for us as fans, but that's their job. That's profession. I at the end of the day, I hope Trevor Story goes wherever he gets the best deal for him. That's what I hope for at the end of the day.
And along the same lines, the Tigers, we see them spending money now, Javi Baez and Eduardo Rodriguez. But the reason they're doing that is because in 2017, they blew up their team. They traded the Verlanders, the JD Martinez's. They acquired literally 5 to 10 top 100 level prospects. And guess what? None of them have panned out. Most of them are not even in the roster. Most of them are not even good players. And you know what they're doing now? They're going to free agency and they're just spending money because they've been trying to rebuild for 4 to 5 years. And it just hasn't worked out. So stop trading your good players at MLB teams, because the returns you usually get, I've talked about this a bunch of my pods. I've looked at trades. Most of the time, these trades where you trade your better player, the team that gets the best player usually ends up winning. So please, Rockies, bring back Trevor Story. I don't want to see as a D-backs fan.
I guess Millard, I don't know if we necessarily got to it, but I mean, what you said is a prime example. I mean, what the Rockies got for Nolan Arenado is not equal to what Nolan Arenado's impact on the team will be. I'm sorry. I don't think Austin Gomber is, from what I've seen last year, is going to be worth what the Rockies could have instead gone out in free agency and said, guess what? I know it's Colorado, but here's an extra $5 million to come here. And you think all those pitchers are really going to sit there and say Colorado's that hard to pitch in when they're not for an extra $5 million? No. They're not, especially when you're going to say, hey, you might get more hits put in play, but look at this infield that's behind you, and look at this outfield that we built behind you. Oh, and here's a lineup of pitchers that have shown success. I mean, pitching at Coors Field, the code has been cracked for a little bit. I did a reflection when I did my Jeff Francis episode. There have been pitchers for a while, humidor, all that good stuff, that have been successful. I mean, there's nothing more infuriating than the Rockies not having Nolan Arenado and Trevor Story anymore because simply of a terrible business mind. You wanted to revisit the Nolan Arenado trade. To be put it plain and simple, I did a full episode on basically the year anniversary. Is the Colorado Rockies are in a worse spot. They are not a better team than they were with Nolan Arenado on the team. They don't have the GM that was in charge of making the move. He got to silently walk 2 months after, drastically changing the outcome of the team. Austin Gomber didn't pitch a whole year, and these top 2 prospects haven't helped these prospects the Rockies got in there haven't helped the Rockies boost their farm system in terms of overall quality. So it's and again, the thing that to remember, the Rockies will be playing the Cardinals for Nolan Arenado to pay for them this year and next year.
Yeah, that's one of the dumbest things in baseball. When you trade your best player and you still have to pay their contract, that is just
$50 million. $50 million. I mean, that's not a small amount of. That's a huge part of that contract to take up. I mean, that is an insane. When you look at the deal, it's a fleecing. It's an absolute fleecing. It still doesn't make sense a year later. I said this too. I truly will never be over it. This is a trade that is horrible, horrendous. Like the Von Miller trade, I was sitting there hurt the first day, but then when you look at it, it's that's a smart deal for all parties.
Yeah.
Instead, now it's we got some people on Rocky's Twitter trying to say that the whole Nolan's been a cancer in the locker room. And
oh my God.
You know what? To be totally honest, I don't care if he was texting people about getting traded, because you know what? You're sitting. I mean, you're the team that you're on literally said, yeah, here's your deal. Let's sign you in here. Here's your opt out. Here's all the other stuff that we have as your scapegoat. We're going to build around you. Here's Ian Desmond and Daniel Murphy. Literally, that's it. I mean, that's all they signed in that time when all they needed was CJ Cron.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. I mean, that's all the Rockies were missing there. Is to put a bow on at least my revisit is the Rockies are in a worse spot, and it's my confidence continues to get lower and lower in the front office. I mean, they've made to re-signing the people they did, the names that they did to come back to the Rockies, CJ Cron, Diaz, and Senza. Those are all good deals. Like, you can't really argue with those. Those are all solid players for the Rockies, but the stain of the Nolan trade and the John Gray and Trevor Story situation from last year into now this offseason, it's just I really just want to know, what are we doing?
Yeah, and one final point that's pro Rockies, if any pitchers are scared of going there, like Marquez and Senzatella, just looked at their splits. They're considerably better at home than on the road. So that they're top two starters. Yep. I think that's about all you need to say about that. So Paul Holden, it looks like you got a busy offseason ahead of you, at least, maybe a stressful offseason ahead of you is the best way to put it.
It can't be worse than than the offseason when Nolan got traded. At least we could see this coming. At least I don't have to have my heart ripped out like that, like I did a year ago this month. So yeah, and we got Dick Monfort leading the negotiations too, and what a great idea that was for baseball. Send the owner of the Rockies to start the negotiations.
Yeah, the Arenado deal genuinely made me hurt and mad when I saw that deal, because I think everyone in the industry had the same reaction. Like that's like MLB fantasy level fleece. Like that would get vetoed.
That's what. Yeah, you have to turn on computer takes all trades. Like that's the only way you'd be able to actually get the Rockies in the game to accept that.
Man, that's crazy. Well, Paul, for the people who are not watching the YouTube video, where can my listeners find you?
You can find me at Paul Holden 33. You can also find the show at LO Rockies. That's where we are always talking Rockies on LO Rockies. And yeah, we are also going to be doing something with Rockies. We're trying to figure out. I've had the same Twitter header picture since I started. So Rockies fans, maybe actually, I'm not going to do it with Diamondbacks fans, because I'm sure there's going to be some other ones. So I, if you want to, that's fine, but you're not going to be considered for the poll. But follow us there. We're also on the push to 50 YouTube subscribers as well. So if you're interested in keeping up with the Diamondbacks, good old buddies, the Rockies, we'd love your follow over there at Locked On Rockies on YouTube. But at Paul Holden 33 or at LO Rockies, and then of course free and streaming on all your favorite platforms.
Of course, as always, Paul, thank you for coming on today. We did almost an hour on here, a very long podcast. So I appreciate you making the time for us. I didn't think we were going to go so long, but hey, now we got a couple episodes for next week as well. So it's always a great time for us podcast hosts to get some extra episodes banked. Paul, thank you for coming on. And sir, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Millard.
That's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Shout out to everyone who tuned in. Shout out to Paul Holden of Locked On Rockies for making some time and hopping on today's pod. Of course, I don't even know what day you're listening to this, so please go check out other Locked On Diamondbacks podcasts that you might have missed. Thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day, because I would not be doing this podcast without you guys. It's free and available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. And as always, please stay safe and stay healthy. Deuces!